Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin Around WDW. Happy Wednesday, flight crew. We are back this week with our third episode of our Parks of the Present Epcot series, still moving around the World Showcase. And today we are going to start in the American Pavilion. So, the American Pavilion was an original pavilion. It opened October 1st, 1982. And the American Pavilion was present in the plans for Epcot Center once it kind of decided that they were going to be doing this Future World and World Showcase, which was around the late 70s. In the early layouts, the American Adventure would have straddled the border between the two areas and feature a more futuristic looking design. And that was going to be the host of the World Showcase. And so they thought it should be right up front in center stage. But it was quickly decided, however, that the USA shouldn't overshadow the other nations. That wouldn't be very friendly of us. So they moved it to the back of the World Showcase, where it still is the centerpiece, but kind of requires the guests to travel around the world to get there. And the pavilion is actually just one single large building that was designed in colonial style. It has the actual American Adventure attraction, which we will talk about, as well as the American Heritage Gallery exhibit. And that is a display of different flags throughout the U.S. history. It does also contain a restaurant, which was the Liberty Inn restaurant. Now it has changed. We'll talk about the new restaurant that opened a few years ago there, but usually has pretty typical American food. The old restaurant Liberty Inn was much more like cheeseburgers and hot dogs. Now they've added a little bit more to the barbecue side of things in that pavilion. But there is also a small gift shop called Heritage Manor Gifts that do sell different American items, as well as the Kid Cot Fun Stop for kids to stop and fill out this portion of their luggage. In 2019, it was announced that the Liberty Inn restaurant would be replaced, like I was talking about, and now the restaurant is called Regal Eagle Smokehouse. They do offer, like I said, barbecue style food as well as craft beers that are themed as a barbecue competition hosted by none other than Sam the Eagle from the Muppets. There is also Fife and Drum Tavern, as well as Block and Hans and the Funnel Cakes. So we will talk about all these different options once we get down to the restaurants in this section. So in 2021, Epcot announced that a new exhibit called The Soul of Jazz, an American Adventure would open inside of the attraction. And it was supposed to be based on Disney and Pixar's animated film Soul. It was part of Epcot's transformation that they did after kind of reopening post-COVID. And so you join Joe Gardner, who is the star of Soul, and you're taken through New Orleans, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and Puerto Rico to hear different jazz music from those different areas across the U.S., since Puerto Rico is considered U.S. territory. So this pavilion, I think as a kid, was one that I remembered the most. And I think a huge piece of that, which we will get into as we kind of go through things, but is the American Gardens Theater and going to different concerts and different things that they had throughout the years. Now they really have a lot pretty much going on all the time. I don't remember if as a kid there was always something there, but now it feels like they have something there almost every day and have a big lineup of concerts, not only at Eat to the Beat, but also at, the Spring Flower and Garden Festival. They do like Flower Power. They have the Broadway, which we'll talk about. So there's always kind of something going on there. And that's what I remember most about the American Pavilion, other than the American Adventure show, which we'll get into. But this is a place that I feel like you guys frequent a lot because of the American Garden Theater. Is that right, Dad? Like when you go to Epcot, y'all almost always go over here for whatever concert is going on.
Yeah, we typically would go to Epcot probably over the last 10 years based on who was, performing at the Flower Power concert series. That's what they called it when we went. I haven't been there lately. And then
Hmm.
Eat to the Beat concert series in the fall for the
Yeah.
Food and Wine Festival. So yeah, that's a place we'd always go to always check out who's singing, and we've seen probably at least 30 different acts there, I would say, over the years. We've gone to many, many different concerts. And
Wow.
a lot of the performers were big when we were young. So it was kind of, oh, we get to see this, somebody that we maybe never got a chance to see. But I could go into that. That's probably a whole nother podcast. But yeah, so we did spend a lot of time there and went to a lot of concerts there and really enjoyed it. And the candlelight processional, we've probably been to that 5 or 6 times. So that's awesome also.
Yeah, yeah, there's always a lot going on at that theater. A lot of big names, like you said, included in your park ticket, which is really cool. And then moving over to Japan, this is the next pavilion next door. And a little background on Japan, it opened as well, original pavilion October 1st, 1982. It's made up of different buildings that kind of surround this courtyard. And the entrance to the courtyard features a Japanese pagoda, which is modeled after the Horyuji Temple in Nara, whose 5 levels represent the 5 elements of earth, water, fire, wind, and sky in Buddhist teachings. The Torii Gate of the Itsushi sorry, I'm going to say this totally wrong. Itsukushima Shrine, which decorates the water in front of the pavilion. The area is filled with Japanese pools and gardens. At the end of the courtyard is the gate to replicate the Shirasagi-jo, which is a 17th century Japanese fortress in Himeji, compete with a moat that is supposed to display Japanese culture. There also is something called the Bitjutsu Kan, which is an art gallery. That's what that means in Japanese. And it's in this exhibition gallery that hosts long-term exhibits on Japanese art and culture. Right now, this presentation is called Kawaii Life, that features a look at Japanese quote unquote culture of cute, which I've been back there. It's basically a huge area of like, they have a lot of Hello Kitty and like Pokemon and all these different very big cultural phenomenons that have come out of Japan. There also is a store, or there also was another exhibit called Living Gifts of Japan that only kind of lasted from October 1st, 1982 when it opened through 1984. After that was the art of the Japanese theater that focused around different forms of Japanese theater and puppetry that ran until 1985. Feathers of the Wind looked at the artistry of Japanese kites, and that ran through 1987. Echoes Through Time, which was kind of from 88 till the 90s, was this ongoing series of exhibits kind of exploring different aspects of Japanese art. They had Japanese women in the arts, they had story carvings of old Japan, and that had like a bunch of little miniature carvings. Then it moved to Karakuri, which were magical toys of Japan from 1999 to 2000. Diamond Warriors, the traditions and Japanese baseball, which was 2000 to 2003. The Tin Toy Stories, 2003 to 2010, that kind of looked at these tin toys and pieces through this collection, and they were imported into Japan around the turn of the 20th century and were adopted into the culture that were exported back out after World War II ended. And they had this video introduction by John Lasseter. Then they moved to Spirited Beasts from Ancient Stories to Anime Stars. That was from 2010 to 2015, and that took a look at mythological creatures in Japanese folklore and contemporary interpretations of them. And now, as we talked about, Kawaii Life. This really explores kind of the history of that design and how it affects the country's Shinto past. And then guests can also learn about how they became this fundamental aspect of the culture and they became tools to use to express oneself at home, work, as well as out in everyday life and play. The clothing that they wore, to food that they eat, to the house where they live, all the different elements of cuteness kind of affected everything. And so this is something that I went in with Gretchen when we were exploring all the different countries last year. I don't ever recall actually going back into that exhibit before. We might have as kids, but that area, I don't think I realized how big it was. Their store there is huge. And the actual exhibit is a larger area too. So they've got a lot of really neat stuff back there. Is that something that you remember, Dad, seeing this little museum that kind of rotated through things in the Japanese pavilion?
Yes, but like you, I never really got past, I guess, the giant goldfish, for
Oh,
lack of,
yeah.
remember the pond there? We used to walk up there, but I think I've been up there 2 or 3 times, but there's a lot going on back there. There's no doubt.
Yeah, there's a lot more than I had realized. I forget how big some of these pavilions are until you walk all the way through them and kind of see, like, oh, this is kind of hidden or things people don't talk about a lot. And then moving over to Morocco, this was one of the later pavilions. So this was an addition, September 7th, 1984. It was the first expansion to be added at the World Showcase. And the Morocco Pavilion was designed to look like a Moroccan city with a realistic minaret that features the only pavilion in which the country's government aided in the design as well. So guests to the pavilion kind of learn about the lifestyle and culture of the Moroccan people through the Gallery of Arts and History. The Fez House shows guests the typical Moroccan house. Inside the actual pavilion, they have North African plants, including citrus trees, date palms, olive trees. And the pavilion also hosts entertainment, including belly dancing. And they do have the restaurant Marrakesh along with the Tangerine Cafe, and these have both changed since this was initially open, but they did serve Moroccan fare, including things like lamb, couscous, harira soup, and then Spice Road Table, which is the more popular restaurant that is still there today in some form. It's changed a little bit, but the Spice Road Table serves small Mediterranean dishes more like small plates or tapas, like harissa chicken rolls. They do have 6 different shops within the pavilion, which kind of sell almost anything you can think of: Moroccan rugs, leather goods, Moroccan clothing. And then some of the major defining structures of the pavilion include the cella, which is a replication of Necropolis in Rabat, and the Koutoubia, which is a replica of the minaret of the same Marrakech, a replica of Bab Bujalaud, the gateway to the Fez Medina that leads you to the bazaar area. King Hassan II, which actually sent Moroccan artisans to design and create a lot of the mosaics that you see back in this pavilion. But because of Islamic religious beliefs on the content of the art, the mosaics contain no representations of people. The government also had previously sponsored the pavilion when it opened, but while a corporation held sponsoring rights on all of the other pavilions, like we mentioned, it was actually the government that had fronted the money for this, which is why they had a big say in the design. But then eventually they pulled out of sponsoring Morocco during the pandemic. And so the interesting and unique merchandise really hasn't been replenished. This day, it's not really exciting for kids or adults. There's not really a lot going on in this pavilion anymore, which is such a shame because it is a really beautiful area. Again, walked back there last year, and I do recall the beautiful tiles that they have. There's some great picture spots when you're walking back towards where they had a lot of these shops and restaurants, and it's just kind of sitting empty and vacant, which is a big bummer. The Gallery of the Arts and History that they had this race against the sun, which was kind of technique that was ancient, and then now kind of where they're at with modern competition. And then they got rid of the Tangerine Cafe and the restaurant Marrakesh. So now we'll talk about the Spice Road Table restaurant. That is the only remaining restaurant in this pavilion. So they do also host the Aladdin character meet and greets here. Usually nowadays I've just seen Jasmine listed, sometimes Aladdin, sometimes the genie, but really not that often all three anymore. But it's also generally criticized because Disney used the country as a proxy for the film's Middle Eastern setting. But the story's original sorcerer, which basically is what Disney based Jafar off of, is said to come from the Maghreb region of North Africa that includes Morocco. So I know personally when I think of Aladdin, I think more of like the Taj Mahal in India, but it has like these Moroccan elements as well, which is why they've gotten away with using it as a character meet and greet in Morocco. Is this a place that you remember? I remember going back here quite a bit as kids, maybe not necessarily eating there, but kind of walking back. We have a lot of pictures with that really beautiful tile walls in the back. But what else do you remember about this pavilion in particular, Dad?
I was never a huge fan of the pavilion, I guess, and of course the food there was not my type of food. But the
Mhm.
pavilion, I thought it was very well done. I also wanted to put on an Indiana Jones outfit and run through it, with my whip, because you
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of the feel when you're running through it, right? Like you do like a little
Yeah,
movie. I felt that way every time I walk in there. I feel that way. But yeah, I think it's very well done. I didn't know the government pulled out of sponsoring it, though. That's something I didn't know. So that can change the vibe real fast. Just that alone. So yeah, but we went there
exactly.
when you were kids in there a few times and kind of just wandered around and checked it out like we did in a lot of these pavilions.
Yeah, and I think a big thing is just like I was saying, the lack of stuff going on. And now the Spice Road Table restaurant, it's actually at the front, kind of on the water. And so once you go to the back of the pavilion, like where all these beautiful things were, it's just so empty besides the meet and greet. And our friends over at Idiot's Guide to Imagineering did this whole idea of putting a genie show back there and doing something with the genie, like this musical review. And I think that's a great idea. I think this pavilion needs something because it's really just like sitting empty. And if they can still keep the Morocco theme and kind of pull Aladdin IP into it or something to keep it alive, but it's very dead back there now. So it definitely needs something. And then moving over into the actual attractions in these pavilions. So the first one is the Gardens Theater, which is in America, obviously. This was open with the park October 1st, 1982. And I got to learn a lot about this theater. As I said, we went here a lot as kids. I've been here as an adult to see different bands, the Candlelight Processional, all of that. But there's actually been a lot kind of going on here since the beginning. So across from the pavilion is the actual theater. It's on the water, and there is an outdoor amphitheater. That's what the American Garden Theater is. It's outdoors, it's open to the air. So that is a little bit of a problem when you get a big downpour or something because none of the seating is really covered. But they do host concerts, singers, bands from around the world. A lot of entertainment acts perform on this stage. And it has hosted a lot of shows since it was built. Over the years, a lot more famous shows include Blast, which I definitely remember, and Barrage. During the park's two major festivals, the International Flower and Garden Festival in the spring and the Food and Wine Festival, musical groups kind of from the 60s and 70s performed, like when they did Flower Power and we said like Eat to the Beat. As well as in 1999, there was a revised version of Michael Flatley's Lord of the Dance, which I also remember seeing, that was performed in the theater over the summer. Even though Michael Flatley did not actually perform himself in the show, the popularity kind of encouraged Epcot to bring the show back in 2000 for another summer run. And this was designed as this open air theater with a partial cover on the actual stage. The backstage dressing room and the show equipment areas were all kind of added during this refurbishment that was completed before the Magical World of Barbie stage show that actually happened in the 80s at Epcot, which I thought was so funny. I was looking up like videos and different things of this Magical World of Barbie show that they had in the 80s that I did not know anything about. Then they also, of course, have the Candlelight Processional, which they have a lot of really famous actors and different singers and people that are famous that come to participate as the main star. I know some big ones that usually participate every year are Josh Gad, the voice of Olaf, as well as Neil Patrick Harris. John Stamos is almost always there. So they have a lot of different people come and host that candlelight processional. They also have the Festival of the Arts now, and that is during that festival, they have Broadway music performers and they perform different songs from the Disney Broadway musicals that aren't always the traditional Disney songs. It's ones that they've created for Broadway, which is really neat. But I do very well remember the Lord of the Dance and going to see those Irish dancers. And then I also feel like I remember Blast, but maybe I'm thinking of something else. We have pictures and it's all these people with these musical instruments. Is that what that was? What am I thinking of?
I believe that's what it was. I think that came in after the Lord of the Dance. I remember the Lord of the Dance. That was the year we actually moved down to Florida in
Yeah,
'99, and
yeah,
we were like, okay, and that's probably why your mom's like, let's get annual passes.
yeah,
We had so
yeah.
much fun there. We were going there all the time. We had so much fun there, and we just couldn't get enough. So, but yes, I think Blast was a bunch of different instruments, and I think it was a younger group, wasn't it? Like a high school age kids or college age kids,
Yeah,
something
they
like
were
that.
definitely young.
A younger group. Yeah, it's like they toured around and did that. I think all over the country, but I do remember that vaguely.
What are some of your most memorable shows that you've seen there that you can recall?
Davy Jones for the Monkees many
That's,
times.
yeah.
You guys remember him, R.I.P. Davy Jones. Mickey Dolenz for the Monkees. He's still alive. He's the last monkey to be alive out of the four. And he still does concerts at like 83 years old.
Wow.
We've seen David Cassidy for the Partridge Family. That
Mm-hmm.
was a big heartthrob of Doreen's and all the girls back in the day. We've seen Three Dog Night, the lead, well, like I call him the lead singer of Three Dog Night, Chuck Negron. Three Dog Night's a real big band from Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog, those songs from way back when
Yeah.
that you might have kind of heard. But he still sang great. He was like 80 years old. He still sang like he was, 25. It was awesome. And I could go on and on. We've just seen Electric Light Orchestra, members of that group there. 38 Special, I think we saw. I mean, the list goes on and on. We've seen so many different bands, and there's just quick little shows. I think they're like 30-minute segments where they sing most of their hits. Peter Noone, who's a big 1960s star who was like 16 years old when he became a big star out of England. Yeah, so I'll stop because I could keep going. We saw a lot of different, and the shows were always fun. People always got into it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, it is a lot of fun. And it's neat that you can get a seat, obviously, if you get there early enough, but you also can just like walk by and hear it and kind of stand in certain areas and
Right.
hear it. You don't have to, there's like, and there's multiple shows, like you said, multiple opportunities to be able to see them usually. This year, they actually are calling it Garden Rocks instead of Flower Power. I think that's because they've moved away from only doing more of the older generation music. They do have some of that, like Rick Springfield is there this year, as well as the Pointer Sisters, but they do also have things like Flock of Seagulls is on there, Plain White Tees, which is definitely something from my growing up time, and Simple Plan, which is huge. I told Maddie like I would just die to go see Simple Plan there. But yeah, they have a huge variety. I mean, there are a ton of shows listed. Blue October. They do also have, I was trying to see, there was another one that I'd seen, Foreigner's Journey, which must be like a tribute band to Foreigner and Journey, is my guess.
Sure, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of different people that they've had. I know ones that I've seen in the past when I was in high school, we definitely went and saw We the Kings there, which was a big like Bradenton local band that became huge. I know Simple Plan is almost always there. I have not seen them there, but I would love to. So there, yeah, there's a lot of really good bands and it's included in your park ticket. And most people would pay a park ticket price just to see some of these bands. And it is a shorter show, but it's really
Sure.
neat. So I think it's an awesome addition. I'm glad they've kept that alive, and I think they'll keep doing it because it's very successful and popular. And then the American Adventure, the actual attraction within the pavilion, was original to the pavilion as well, but it has changed a lot kind of over the years. Well, at least the concept of it that they initially came up with had a lot of different drafts. So Mark Davis did work on the initial concepts for this, which kind of ranged from this 1975 dark ride that was proposed, that was going to be this whimsical musical exploration of American history and culture, to more serious explorations of American folklore and history. And then they kind of moved to that in 1976, the more serious side. Then they decided that they were going to focus on different figures from across American history together. So they kind of put together things from Mark Twain to Benjamin Franklin, Will Rogers, and Davis actually left the project shortly afterwards. So after the other Imagineers continued this idea of an animatronic stage show, they decided to make it about a 30-minute runtime. And the show's hosts were Benjamin Franklin, Mark Twain, which represented the 1700s and 1800s. And they were initially going to be joined by Will Rogers as a representative of the 20th century. But the creative team was worried that he wasn't very iconic. And so they decided to nix that idea, put him as a small role in the Great Depression scene. They did create this song for this attraction called The Golden Dream, and Ben Franklin and Mark Twain kind of shake hands and reveal statues lining both sides of the theater, which represent different qualities of Americans. So they have this seaman, which represents adventure, a female doctor, which represents compassion, a mountain man, which is discovery, a pilgrim, which represents freedom, a Native American woman, which represents heritage, American Revolutionary Soldier, which represents independence, a cowboy, which is individualism, African American scientist, which represents innovation, a school teacher for knowledge, a pilot for pioneering, a farmer for self-reliance, and then a mother and her child that's supposed to represent tomorrow. So they kind of have these big themes that they're trying to accomplish with this ride. And then in 1993, the attraction was updated with all new animatronics and a new version of the song. In mid 2007, 44 seconds of footage were added to the end of the montage, which was the first update since 1993, which is a huge chunk of time before an update. The most notable addition is brief footage of the New York Police Department and the Fire Department of New York after the September 11 attacks in 2001 at the World Trade Center. Then in early 2018, the ending montage was updated again, and the song kind of received a little bit of a new arrangement and orchestration. The show then opened with the park on October 1st, 1982, and this upgrade in 1993, it was kind of the last big one. They've done these small endings to the montage, but the actual attraction has pretty much remained unchanged since 1993. And I'm surprised they haven't updated this. I have not actually been in this attraction, I don't think, since we were kids. Maddie and I were talking about this. I don't even know that he's ever been in this pavilion. He's only been towards the concert side of things. But have you been in this more recently, Dad? Is this one that you do fairly often?
Yeah, I never miss it. It's probably one
Okay.
of my favorite attractions at Epcot, hands
Yeah.
down. I mean, I like some of the other things like Soarin' and obviously Guardians of the Galaxy was pretty cool. It's apples and oranges, right? It's this has been around forever. It's very patriotic. That's my my bio. I just really enjoyed it. And I remember when they added the 9/11 part to it, was very emotional for probably everybody that was in there. It was very well done, but it's yeah, that hit people pretty hard. I really enjoy it, and we never miss it.
Yeah, I do remember going to this as a kid and then going to Hall of Presidents and thinking this is so much better. I mean, Hall of Presidents is
Yeah.
cool because they have all the animatronics of the different presidents, but the actual like message, the song in it, the footage at the end, I remember being much better than the Hall of Presidents. I think the reason that we skip over it is because we are always rushing through Epcot now. There is a lot more to do, but it's one that I definitely would love to revisit and see the updates. I believe I did see it after 2007 with that update, but I don't think I definitely have not seen it since 2018 when they updated it again. So it's one that I'd like to get back to, as I say about almost everything when we go through all of this. So then moving over into the dining. So those are actually the only attractions. So the other two pavilions, Japan and Morocco, do not currently have attractions. So America is the only one with attractions, but there are a lot of eating opportunities kind of in these different areas. So the first in America, they do have a Joffrey's, and this is your typical Joffrey's with pastries. They do have frozen lemonade, lattes, cappuccinos, espressos, as well as some different spirited beverages that kind of range between $4 to $15. The alcoholic beverages are about $15 each. That kind of include this espresso martini, sunset strawberry lemonade, and tea breeze. And that has been there for quite some time. They've updated the menus and things like that over the years, but it's been there for a while. Then they have Fife and Drum Tavern, which was opened July 15th, 2020. So right after they reopened post-COVID. And this has a lot more traditional park snack things. So like turkey legs, ice cream, popcorns, pretzels. They do have root beer floats here, lemonade slushies, and assorted beers, as well as this frozen black cherry bourbon lemonade. And snacks are kind of between $7 and $15. Alcoholic drinks are like 11 to 15. But as we've talked about a few times on this show, I always scope out where the root beer floats are. So I have gotten a root beer float from here before. And then the Regal Eagle Smokehouse. This is what used to be the Liberty Inn Tavern at the end of the attraction, and they changed it February 19th, 2020, actually right before COVID, to kind of theme it around Sam the Eagle, which I like. I like that they're kind of keeping that alive. I wish there was a way to somehow include Muppet Vision over here since they got rid of it. I feel like it would fit well if they had another theater space that they could add that to. But the menu there has changed. Before it was kind of just like burgers, hot dogs. Now they still do have burgers, but they do pork ribs. They have the smoked half chicken beef brisket, burgers and salads with barbecue pork, pork butt, or chicken. They do have just traditional like fries, onion rings, mac and cheese, baked beans, cornbread, and they kind of range from $13 to $17 for entrees. But this, yeah, has been there. The restaurant has been there since the attraction opened. It just changed over about 5 years ago. And then they also have the funnel cake area right kind of behind the American Garden Theater. And this was possibly there on opening day. I really couldn't find like an exact date, but it has different festival offerings. Like, for example, right now during the Flower and Garden Festival, they have this peaches and cream funnel cake. But then traditionally, they usually have a cookies and cream, vanilla ice cream topping on the funnel cake, chocolate sauce topping, and whipped cream. And they kind of range from $10 to $15. They also have, which I thought was very cool, this funnel cake gift kit that they sell for $21 that comes with the pitcher you need to like pour the funnel cake, as well as a 5 pound bag of mix and directions on how to make it with like different recipes. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'm not a big funnel cake person, surprisingly. I know it's like sugary, basically right up my alley, but it's not something like I'd rather get ice cream instead. But where out of these restaurants have you guys stopped? I know as kids, we definitely ate at the restaurant at the end of the attraction. I don't know if I've been there since. Have you had the barbecue here since it got rethemed, Dad?
We never have, and we haven't been to Epcot a whole lot. We went with you last year. You took us
Yeah.
there for our Christmas present, which was awesome, and we really enjoyed that. I mean, with the girls and everything. But I guess part of it is since we got our Greyhounds, that was 2017, 2018, and then of course COVID hit and everything. We have not been back to that area. We haven't taken the time. Of course, we get somebody to watch the dogs or something, but we just haven't taken the time to go over there. And I really love Epcot. I don't really love some of the things they changed about it, but that's a whole nother podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there is a lot back in as far as food offerings in the America section. I really like what they do with the topiaries. They had a beautiful Tiana topiary here last year when I went for Flower and Garden. Eileen and I really didn't have time to stop back here this year when we went because we were splitting our day with Hollywood Studios. So we really were rushing kind of around the park before we went over. But I really love it. I think the pavilion is really well done. And yeah, I love what they have to offer here. I definitely would eat there. I just haven't. I feel like Epcot is the place where there's the most to eat, different options, different variety, obviously all the countries. And so it's sometimes hard to narrow down what you want to eat, but I love the multiple quick service food options. Then we also have in Japan the Kabuki Cafe. This opened July 25th, 2011, and this is actually more the kakigori, which is like shaved ice, ranges from $7 to $8. They have different flavors. They also have sake slushies, sushi that you can pick up there that's rather inexpensive for a few pieces of sushi, like $5 to $7, like California rolls, nigiri combos, and spicy rolls, chilled edamame as well. And then they do have different alcoholic beverages, just like traditional sake, Kirin, and Sapporo. I remember this as kids. I believe we tried the shaved ice a few different times here because it was something that was easy on a hot day. And if we weren't quite ready for ice cream, it was a little bit lighter. So I do remember trying the shaved ice a couple of times. Do you remember that, Dad, trying that before?
I do, yes. I remember that little place where it was a little, wasn't it like a
Like
little booth or
stand.
something, or like a little
Yeah.
trailer, a little cart there. That was just that's all they sold was shaved ice, I think, right?
Yeah, at the time
Yeah,
for sure was all they sold was like shaved ice. There was not
right,
much else there, but
right.
yeah, it's like right at the front of the pavilion. And then they also have the Katsura Grill, which opened the same time, December 7th, 2011. This replaced the Yakitori counter service restaurant, and it is quick service, just like sushi, different teriyaki. They have different noodle bowls, asusume, and side orders that kind of range between $12 to $16 for entrees. I have not ever been back here, but we do really like teriyaki chicken and noodles. So it's something that, again, I would be willing to try, especially quick service where it's not as much of an investment for your money. And they do then have another restaurant called Teppan Edo, and this is located within the actual pavilion main building and was part of the Mitsukoshi department store. It originally was called the Teppanyaki Dining Room, and then which was actually when the pavilion opened, but then later got changed to the name Teppan Edo in 2007. It's a pretty typical Japanese experience with appetizers like edamame, miso soup, soy butter calamari, and sushi like volcano roll, spicy roll, California roll, or sashimi. They do also have a sampler. The big kicker here for me, as a person who loves hibachi, is there's no fried rice. They only do noodles and then steamed white rice because apparently, I did not know this before I was researching this, fried rice is a Chinese thing. So they're trying to stick to like true and authentic Japanese culture and meals. And so they do not have fried rice, which is a big bummer. I did go to this restaurant back in like 2014, maybe, with mom and grandma Sandy. And I remember being very disappointed about the rice because that's like one of my favorite parts about hibachi. It otherwise was good. It's very expensive to me. The hibachi kind of starts at $28 a person and then goes up to $48 if you get like a steak and chicken or shrimp and steak combination. But it does include also veggie only options, which is the cheaper side, then goes up a little bit for chicken, up even more for steak, and up again for seafood. You can also do add-on meats like lobster tail and fancier things like that. They do have a lot of cocktail options as well as traditional sake and Japanese whiskeys. Have you ever eaten here, Dad? Because I know we used to do a local place called Joto's all the time growing up at Hibachi, but I know with your seafood, it can be difficult, like your seafood allergy, to eat at places like this. So is this a place you ever tried?
We never have, even though Doreen, my wife, and we took Grandma Gloria a few times,
Mm-hmm.
and other people loved that kind of food. We just never did because you're right, we did the local stuff, not
Mm-hmm.
quite often, but enough to yeah, enough not to want to spend that kind of money for the similar food. So yeah, we never did that. I remember.
Yeah, it's one that I don't know that I would necessarily go back to because I wasn't overly impressed with the price. But the actual inside of the restaurant and the pavilion is pretty cool. But the rest of it was, there's so many other awesome places to eat in Epcot that I was just kind of like, I don't know if I would go back again. There is another restaurant that just recently opened in 2003, and that is called the Shiki Sai Sushi Azakaya. And this is the second floor of the Japanese pavilion at the Walt Disney World Epcot Pavilion. And they also are advertising it as this taste of authentic sushi, these is izakaya style dishes and refreshing beverages among enchanting scenes from Japanese Four Seasons. They do have nigiri, sashimi, and sushi, as well as donburi, an assortment of rolls and chef specials that can range from inexpensive, like $10 to $300, kind of depending on what you're ordering. They do have these izakaya classics, which include eggplant with miso sauce, chicken nanban, wagyu steak, squid, fried squid, and different rice and noodle dishes that kind of range again. Cheap $10 to up to $90, kind of depending on what you get. But there are dozens of options. The more expensive things were huge amounts of sushi, like you'd have to split it between a ton of people. But I could not believe it when I read that it was like $300 for some of this stuff. I think that like blows my mind that people spend that much on food. But I guess if you're splitting it between five people, it's like $60. Maybe that's not so bad. You're spending that at other restaurants. But I have not even seen this because it just opened last fall, year before last. And so it's not somewhere that we have stopped by, assuming you also have not stopped by here, Dad.
I didn't even know it existed. But again, it's brand new, but I mean, it sounds pretty cool. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little probably above my budget.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I've heard that the reservations can go pretty quick. I know a lot of people really love sushi, so that can go fast. Then getting to our last restaurant, this is the Spice Road Table and Bar in Morocco. And this technically opened January 20th, 2014. And everything here is small plates. So it's all basically appetizers. The big kicker about this that people don't love is if you get the Disney dining plan, you cannot use it here because it's not an entree. You're ordering like multiple small plates of food. So that's kind of a bummer for people that I've read. I have heard that it's pretty good, but not somewhere that I think I would stop with the kids because again, it's more spicy or like they have different spices, but like unique things that I feel like they would not necessarily enjoy. Disney did take over the management of this in 2020 after Morocco and the government, like we said, kind of stopped sponsoring this pavilion. And so they made it into what it is today. But the menu ranges from things like non-spreads with hummus, the za'atar chicken basilla, calamari, and a spicy shrimp, as well as a dessert platter, kind of ranging between $10 to $15. So it just kind of depends what you get, but usually you order, it's very small, so you're ordering like two or three things at least of these options because they're supposed to be meant to either be shareable or like an appetizer type size. Have you guys ever eaten here? Or did we? Because it kind of opened, I mean, after we would have been going to places
Right.
like this.
Exactly. Yeah. We never, Doreen and I never ate there. And yeah, again, you were older, and that's probably the last place I would have taken you to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
other options you would have enjoyed much more than probably that. Not that it's bad food, it just wasn't our type of food.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that is all the restaurants in these three pavilions. Like we talked about earlier, really the only character meet and greet that is listed for these pavilions is Jasmine in Morocco. Again, occasionally Aladdin or the genie make a showing. We do have pictures actually outside of this pavilion, kind of by the water with Genie as kids that I've posted on the Instagram before. But for the most part, there really isn't a good, meet and greet consistent here other than Jasmine, which I'm kind of bummed that they don't have Jasmine and Aladdin and the genie there together. As I've talked about with other meet and greets, it's nice where you can go, you wait in one line and then you go from one to the next to the next. But I guess they do have the Jasmine and Aladdin meet and greet over in Magic Kingdom outside of the magic carpets of Aladdin, which I've been to with Eiley. So I don't know if they just don't want to repeat or what that is about. For today's old versus new, we did talk about it a little bit, but was going to kind of talk about the American Adventure versus the Hall of Presidents and which one you prefer. If you said you had to keep one and one had to go, what would your choice be?
Oh, it'd have to be, I would say keep the American Adventure. I mean, again, I mentioned it as my favorite attraction at Epcot. So yeah, and I would definitely go with that because it tells a story, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. And I think it keeps your interest more and tells a story. The movie at the end is amazing. And Hall of Presidents is awesome in its own way too. That came out probably what 11 years earlier when in '71 when Magic Kingdom opened up. It's still amazing. But I would more than likely always want to stop at American Adventure or Hall of Presidents. I might hit that every couple of years, if I want to get out of the heat and want to take a nap, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's kind of the thing. And I do feel like I mentioned Muppet Vision 3D potentially moving to the American Pavilion in some way, shape, or form. But ultimately, I would be okay with them nixing Hall of Presidents and incorporating Muppet Vision 3D in that space because then it could still be in Liberty Square. It's still Celebration of America. And it'd be cool if they could somehow incorporate the president still, like not get rid of the animatronics, but play the, Muppet Vision 3D show, but then I don't know, do something where they could do a little bit of both and not so long with the presidents. So yeah, I agree. I think keeping American Adventure and then kind of getting rid of the Hall of Presidents or refurbing it in some way, shape, or form to make it a little more storytelling or something. But Muppet Vision would be cool to go there, in my opinion. So I am pulling up our trivia for today. In which pavilion is it always twilight? Is it Canada, Norway, Mexico, or China? If they mean the inside, I'm going to say Mexico because it's always kind of dark in there.
That's a tough one. Yeah, because Twilight is just starting. It's the sun's already set, right?
Yeah.
But it's not quite dark yet. You still get a little bit of light from the sun, but it's already set below the horizon. So that's kind of like Twilight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the other attractions. Mexico, is it twilight or is it night? It's pretty
True.
dark in there. What were the other options, Olivia? I'm sorry.
That's okay. Canada, Norway, Mexico, or China. I mean, Norway, it's
Are
kind
they
of dark
talking
in there
about
too.
they're talking about the attraction at Norway,
Well,
the
they
frozen
said
attraction,
pavilion. It just says the pavilion.
pavilion. Okay, I'll go with Mexico because I can't envision the other ones being dark like that, but I'll go with Mexico also.
Okay, yeah, let's see. Okay, yep, Mexico. That's correct.
It is.
Woohoo.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was like, I wish they had a little more explanation, but yeah, I guess technically it is always twilight there. That's interesting. Okay, well
Twilight.
that,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that is it for this week's episode. Next week, we wrap up the World Showcase, finishing out with Canada, the United Kingdom, and France, which are some of my favorite pavilions in this section of the park. And I think there's a lot to talk about there, kind of with everything they've done and what's changed, but definitely love these pavilions. They're very well themed. I think the ones that we've talked about, America is great, kind of as is. And I do feel like Japan, maybe it'd be cool if they had some kind of attraction or something else going on. Morocco, they definitely need to do a little more here. So it'll be interesting over the coming years, like what they do if they decide to add something back in the space of Morocco, especially, or what they come up with. But that is all for this week. We will catch you guys next week. I hope you have a good week.
See you next week.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. If you're listening on Apple, hit that 5-star button and leave us a written review as well. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.